Amen.
Pledge allegiance. United States of America, to the republic for which stands one nation, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Roll call.
Mr. Bernardo,
Here.
Mr. Grady,
Here.
Mr. Holmes, Mr. Miller,
Present.
Mr. Paradise.
Here.
Mr. Fernandez.
I don't think anybody's on there. All right, so make a motion to approve February 2022 regular meeting minutes.
Motion to approve February 2022 minutes.
Second. All in favor? New business?
Some appropriations here. Move to appropriate $600 from the sale of 2 old computer servers to a police computer equipment account in the capital non-recurring fund.
Second.
Discussion?
So Kevin, this is so we're selling 2 computer servers to the police department? Is that what this is?
No, we had 2 old servers in the police department that were replaced, and so IT sold them. And we'd like to take the money appropriated back to the police department account to be used for other computer equipment.
David Scott.
Oh,
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to reappropriate $4,000. Is that right, Kevin? Reappropriate?
yes,
Move to reappropriate $4,000 juvenile work grant for the grants and donation fund.
Second.
Second.
Discussion?
That's why reappropriate.
What is it?
we originally appropriated the grants and donation fund. We did not know when they would be hiring somebody. It was intended for social and youth services to hire a part-time person to help. They ultimately hired someone very quickly. We pay generally through the general fund for the folks. So rather than splitting the payroll, the grant is to be used only in this fiscal year. So by moving the appropriation, it just makes it administratively easier. Payroll costs coming from one fund. It'll be exhausted at the end of the year. So it's just moving the appropriation from one fund to the other.
All in favor?
Aye.
Move to appropriate $35,000 from the coronavirus relief funds reimbursement to the police overtime expenditure account in the general.
Second.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Kevin, you want to?
Yeah. So at the last council meeting, we had an agenda item to appropriate the funds, the ARPA funds that remained after the $700,000 that's included in this budget for the HVAC project at Willard. Just before we went forward, U.S. Treasury issued the final guidance on what the funds can be used for. And as part of that, they created a new setup or eased the administration and allowed the lost revenue to be assumed to be at least $10 million or up to $10 million, not to exceed the amount we were originally allotted, which was a little over $6 million. What that means is we can characterize the entire grant as recovering from lost revenue, and then that money, based on the guidance, can be used for government services. And on the first page of the motion, I listed some of the things: environmental remediation, general government administration, police, fire, other public services. And in this one in particular, I wanted to call it because they did specifically say, including the purchase of fire trucks and police vehicles. I'm very serious. So that is now an option. I still brought forward the motion. The town manager believes, we believe the best use of these funds is still to fund the HVAC project at Willard. This would be the first school of the all three elementary schools would have the work done. Willard was selected, one, because it's the oldest system. Second, it's the largest school, so it will allow for benchmarking as we look at the other 2 schools. Also, the plan is, we're not going to be able to do this in the summer of 2022. There's just no way to line up vendors and equipment between now and then, even if we appropriate this money now. So the plan would be to use about 300,000 of the 5.3 million to hire a construction manager to help guide us through this process. These are going to be, it's a substantial project. All up, Public Building Commission's latest guidance is probably going to cost $15 to $20 million for the 3 schools collectively. So it makes sense to have a construction manager be able to use grant funds to do that. Makes a lot of sense to protect the money. Then we would be able to go out for next summer. The second half of that is because Willard will be closed for the summer for this work to be done. We want to try and take advantage of it and use a state grant, LoCIP money, local capital improvement money. We receive about $125,000 each year. So we'd like to take this year's money and next year's money, which are given March 1st of each fiscal year, to redo the parking lot at Willard, which is also desperately in need of the loading dock area. A couple of years ago, we did Griswold School. So this would help us get the second of 3 elementary schools at least completed. So since it's closed, it seemed like the opportune time to do both rather than disrupting summer school 2 summers in a row. So I think there's a lot of value to appropriating this money. The council wanted to consider a couple of things. One, the new information, that now there are additional uses available by counting it as lost revenue. Second, the governor and his budget proposal put forward a proposal to spend $90 million on HVAC upgrades through state grant money. $90 million sounds like it is a lot of money, but if you break it down very conservatively, you're probably talking $1 million, $1.5 million. And the grant system was to be a 50% match, so 50% local, 50% state. It certainly, I mean, if the state were willing to give us $1 million or $1.5 million, we'd love to take it. We're always going to try to take that opportunity, but it's certainly not going to offset this project. So moving it forward, we think is the best use of the money. When the topic came up, we got to talking about bonding and other aspects, because this was discussed last meeting at the same time the police station renovation was discussed, as well as additional money proposed to appropriate for community senior center architectural work. And the council essentially tabled all 3 and said, what we'd like to do is get together with Board of Finance to figure out from a bonding perspective and a longer strategy, hence the meeting tonight. I wanted to share this same information with you, and behind it, you'll see behind the motion, the first 2 pages with some highlighting are specifically out of the actual guidance. The next is the summary. So it's an over 40-page summary, but this is 432 pages of the actual final rule. But the 2 pages, what I wanted to share with you is that it specifically talks about capital. One of the things it does say is installation and improvements of ventilation systems. So we're pretty confident before that this would be included, but now they have specifically spelled it out. So again, we think it's the appropriate thing, but, and again, I just wanted to make sure you guys have the same information the council has before you meet.
So we're not approving anything at this point, and then next go around, what would that be, 300,000 for this program manager? Or whatever?
We would propose appropriating the whole thing to it. There's a couple of advantages. One, it would allow for the April 30 reporting period for us, which is the first reporting period we have as a non-entitlement unit. That's what we classify as. It's the first time we will report to the U.S. Treasury on what we intend to do with the money. I would put 700,000 under the lost revenue, and it was appropriated and used for general services. If you appropriate the balance of the money, I would put it under what's called the capital umbrella. There's a few different buckets with the intent of using it for the HVAC system. We have until December of 2024 to actually obligate the money, and December of 2026 to expend it. I think it would behoove the town, if we wanted to do this, to appropriate the money. That would allow the project team to move forward, hiring the construction manager, getting prepared. It is a long process, and the sooner we can select a vendor, the sooner we can order the materials, avoid delays, and hopefully be able to take care of Willard next summer.
So is there a date when you're looking to do that by? The only reason I ask, and this is just something I heard. I don't know whether anything whatsoever will come of it, but I know there's somebody pushing now and pushing the legislature to develop air quality standards for schools. And who knows what will come out of that? I think it could come out as a, yeah, here's the new air quality standards and here's an unfunded mandate, go and do it, or maybe they'll pony up some dollars too. I don't know.
It is certainly possible. I will tell you that the original air study was done, I want to say 4 or 5 years ago. I know Doug Sullivan will be at the meeting tonight, who's been involved with this from the start, very much involved. What the PBC did recently was to put all 3 schools back out, to have them redone to make sure they meet current standards and everything is in compliance. That is a risk, I would say, whenever we do this, that government seems to have a way of stepping in, probably
Well, I
at an opportune time.
And I think this is all coming from the perspective that if the air filtration was better, COVID wouldn't have been as big an issue as it was. The person I heard speaking was lamenting that there really were no across the board air quality standards that everybody agreed upon. It wasn't sort of like a mandate. It was like, do it if you feel like it type of deal.
Well, I'd say the last point, probably fair. I mean, and I can tell you municipalities are clamoring for school construction money to try to at least move forward with schools. But I think you're going to see it in congregate housing, like senior housing, assisted living, hospitals, in addition to schools. Just because people are in those areas. If this is a public building, most people are in and out. They're not in here all the time. In school, and these kids, the teachers, administrators, they were in 6, 7, 8 hours a day. So that's why we think it's the right thing. If the feeling after tonight is to do that, then we bring it back to the council. Council does appropriate the money, then we'll come back at the next meeting to have you guys appropriate the money as well. This will certainly be a big topic because that's a major project. But this would help, I think, significantly from a financing standpoint against what the town would alternatively likely have to bond.
But we were looking at originally bonding the whole thing. So anything we leave there is up. The last time we talked, this was $10 million. The town council meeting, it was $15 to $20 million was the number. How did it double?
That's the latest I've heard from Mike Ahern will be there tonight. He's probably the best one to ask because he's the liaison to the PBC. But in talking through with him, the latest number that he had given was about 18 million what they were estimating. So I was saying 15 to 20 in that range. I think the big thing is the goal is to go out to bid. When the money's appropriate, go out to bid on Willard and really get a good number. What do we think that is? And then go to a professional cost estimator and try to get good, solid cost estimates. Again, not only estimates, but much more precise with all the details. But here's all covered to really have a better number because it's moving and it's moving wrong direction and moving substantially. Very fair point.
I agree with you. But when we first started talking about these a while back, it was like, yeah, we think it might be 3 million in school. And anybody who thinks that we're doing ourselves a favor by putting these projects and other projects off, it's just not happening. The costs would just go out of sight. I have to say too, you know, when we had our joint meeting with town council, I think there was a lot of people on the council side too that thought it was a good idea to do the schools. And to me, it was a good idea then. And it's still a good idea.
I thought it was a good idea. Then the only thing that puts me off is looking, staring down the barrel to no tax increase. So that's the problem I have with some of it. We can use some of that money to offset that little tax increase. Then I wouldn't have a problem with that. Yeah, it is, but you know what? We didn't have to can begin with. Yes. No, we can do it now. I don't have a problem with that, but I'm saying we might want to pull some of that money off to offset the 2 million tax.
I got Zoom up, but can't hear shit. It was better hearing it on the phone.
Can you, whoever's on the phone, please mute. Thank you.
I agree with that. Consensus amongst all of us. We'll have to go through the, budget process. Here and figure out where we're at. Of course,
Those are gonna fly.
so
really hate to be in the same spot we were, next year for this year, because, using that money, it's a one-shot deal. And then we gotta deal with it next year. I mean, I want to get, so we start getting a little cleaner, because we're gonna end up doing it every year. I don't think we want to do that, so we're gonna have to figure
And we're
this
gonna
out.
have to make some heavy cuts.
We'll have to look at it.
I like those.
All right. We have to make up, have
You just have to move them from room to room. You gotta think ahead.
I agree. I don't think no one wants to see no premiums.
Yeah. That's gonna be a tough one to do. I'm just thinking of any option. I mean, we pulled off, we got 5.3 million, pull off 1.3. We're still leaving 4 million over, but we didn't have to begin with. We're still ahead. Plus, I know they're working, I think Donna's working on another grant too. Know anything about that? Is the state working for another grant? Or is that the one? Oh, that's 90 million.
That's the, yeah.
So that's in all likelihood coming at some point. Something.
Hasn't been approved yet. It's a
Yeah.
proposed program. It's not
It's
even in
money,
the
the
budget.
state will have no problem.
That would be funded, but.
What? Yeah, go fund it.
I think you also probably want to take a few minutes tonight to talk, have Doug talk, because the planning and what was put together for the study was not done necessarily consistent with what the state would require for the grant. It's completely inconsistent with the standards, but the state, they are following standards, but the state tends to establish a lot more parameters. Doug can speak more to that and how it was designed. But I think we have to probably be a little cautious, because going after the grant may end up ultimately delaying the projects. I'm not the best person to speak to it, but I just want to make sure it's not forgotten tonight when Doug's there. Let him talk about it.
It's very, yeah, I get it.
Can I ask a sort of relevant question? Because it's something to do with the second meeting, and you're on, and you're the capital project, plan, right? I heard that one of the projects we're going to be talking about is $5 million for the police department. And I'm trying to wrap my head around, has that been on the capital plan? I mean, I don't recall, because we threw money in for
It wasn't really
jail
discussed.
cells, communications, locker rooms. And we've been throwing money at it in projects over the last 4 years. Now, all of a sudden, I'm hearing 5 million more. And I'm saying, where's this been on the priority list?
You want me to answer?
It's a smaller project. It started out as a smaller project. As I understand it, the police accountability rules, the law that they passed, also put standards in for police departments themselves. And they had to go in and modify a bunch of the stuff. I mean, jump in anytime and help me out here, but that's how I understand it, is it significantly raised the cost of a lot of the project.
That's true. And Brian Hughes spoke to that council meeting. Brian he's here in town. He's an architect on, I'm gonna say, 30, 40 police departments. He put up a map on how to get these 30 around the state they've worked on. It's always been in what we refer to as the gray box. So at the bottom of the capital plan is gray area. These were the major new initiatives: community senior center, police station, either renovation or build. These were the major items where we said, there's no way staff is going to be able to tell where finance, the council, how much it's going to cost or what we should do, because these are major town initiatives versus say, we need to replace a boiler at school. It's existing, what's it going to cost? So it was always down there. I did have a conversation earlier today to make sure that the work we did put in an interview room, soft interview room right off the lobby. Somebody who came in because they were a victim of crime, many times either had to be interviewed in the lobby, pulled back into the secure area, and then provide their information. So we did take a portion of the records room area, create a soft interview room, which allows privacy for folks who are in there. Also a hard interview room, which previously we were required by statute to videotape interviews. They used to take actually a laptop and interview that way because we didn't have the equipment. So they converted a portion of the evidence area and converted it into a hard interview room with video equipment, modernizing that. We've done obviously the police radio system and renovated the whole dispatcher area and then of course the jail cell area. What I was told today is all of those will be in place and that this will continue that process and build on it, obviously at a much higher degree. This, the next big item, and this is really essential, is the locker rooms. The locker rooms themselves are completely inadequate. If you think about it, if anybody was on the council meeting, you saw basically lockers that are, I think they're about 24 inches wide. They have ventilation and drawers and storage for boots and other things underneath. The lockers today are the equivalent of basically a middle school locker room. I mean, they're so
They're
the
smaller than a high school hallway locker.
Yeah.
They're
I'll say this, if we were to hire another, police officer.
we don't have any.
We don't have any. It's.
We haven't appropriated any money towards the locker room.
Not the lock. Well, no, not the lock. The only thing we did do with the locker rooms to date, up until about 2 years ago, there was actually no air conditioning in the men's locker room. The ladies' locker room had it. The ladies' locker room is, I would say roughly half the size of this room. I mean, it's tiny. The men's locker room didn't have air conditioning, so if you were to come in the building, in the parking lot, you would see an air conditioning unit with piping inside. Our facilities group did a great job. They drilled through the wall, piped in air conditioning, dramatically changed the environment there. Prior to that, the guys used to actually leave the door open with a fan, trying to get the air to blow out. Really just bad. And the biggest part is we can't hire another, basically hiring a female officer. They've taken the entire dispatch group and put them in cubbies in the hallway to create room for the last, I believe it was 2 female officers we hired. So the lockers are the next really essential piece. They've always been the next one on the docket. We just,
So 5 seconds from,
no,
so 5 million is to expand renovations of it.
It's broken into 3 stages. The first stage is the locker room area. It's the biggest part of the whole thing. It extends down into the storage area for Board of Ed. That was 2.8 million. Then there's a center section, or there's a section in the middle they want to do. And a little bit around the outside to improve some of that area. The detectives area and stuff is included in that. Then the third phase is not, I would call it not critical. It's carports.
Yeah.
For the cruisers. I mean, it's needed, but it's not, I mean, it's not live or die by.
that would
No.
be the locker room area.
That's gonna disappear.
They're just gonna take that.
Yeah, well, this has.
I know. I mean.
It's just kind of wrapped into the whole package.
It's a problem.
Yeah,
So.
They'll take it out and remediate.
So I'll ask the question, 5 million, how much time is it buying?
no, that'll buy it decades,
Brian was saying that's a 20 years.
Yes. easy 10 years.
So he gave a formal presentation last
did.
time.
He did.
It was a really good presentation. And it's considerably larger than it is now. I think it almost doubles the size.
Yeah.
So it's
Well, right
been
now-
inadequate for quite a number of years.
Your detectives bureau is kind of in the middle. If you were to like face the front of the station, you have the chief and deputy chief going through their offices. That's where their area would be in the middle, on the other side of where they gather at the beginning of shift. And then if you think about it, it's sergeants are sharing a room, an area. So this is trying to create some more space along that area. And then right now we have 1 sally port in the back. This would have 2, which would be on the back side where the Board of Ed, there's a, if you were to go down the stairs to the Board of Ed room, there's a garage door there. There's an opening area and that leads into the storage, and they would have 2 sally ports there.
It does the booking room and everything too. It's a nightmare right now. It's an absolute nightmare.
It also would create an entrance area for the public in, so they would have a room the public could come into. Right now, if somebody wants to attend the police commission meeting, it's a public meeting. If they're down in that conference room in the back corner, you essentially have to walk, you have to walk through the police station to get in there. That's just not a secure way to operate, bringing the public through there.
No, it's really not even supposed to be done, period.
So
Not at all.
you referred to some legislation. What particularly is in that legislation that needs to be corrected?
For the police accountability.
Yeah.
That was the
Sally Port's one.
Sally Port area, the booking area.
So that's the outdoor.
The Sally Port is the enclosed area, so you bring you arrested somebody, you bring them in, you close the doors behind you, so that if somehow they were to overwhelm the officer, they're contained in that area. We have one in the back. If you were to go beyond where all the cars are parked, there's
So we
actually,
have.
it's essentially a garage.
Yeah,
A garage.
it's a garage.
It's not up to standard.
No, it's not. It hasn't been standard in years.
I took it to a, was an IU experience that right now. And I'll say this. I think we wasted some money on jail cells. To say that, say it out loud out there. I don't think we could, but I think it was overkill, excuse me, when intended into the. Too much money. Spent on that.
They've been full. They've been full. I think would have been better if our group bring them. Just bring them up there.
So the good news is tonight at the meeting, Michael Hearn will be there, his liaison at the PPC. I'm not sure, I thought he was gonna reach out to someone, I'm not sure if somebody from the PPC will be there tonight. As well as Doug, who has been very involved in the HAC project for, I believe it's probably over the last 5 years. So there's going to be real hands-on experts who have been editing these plans and designs.
Are there potential signs already available? Yeah, that was you guys share with.
If the best thing I would recommend, go to the last town council meeting and watch the presentation on the police station. It was excellent. Really went into detail. They had blow ups on the screen showing you each section, how it was going to be developed. It really was, I mean, I learned more.
We
than
asked
that.
Mike to type Mike tonight too, because I would think the PVC would receive Brian's design. It was nice because he broke it into 3 different colors, so you could actually see the phases and where they would affect things. He did it. I mean, it's a surprise.
So 5 million, we would be just the cost of the whole project. 3 phases, 5 million.
Well, that's the PD part, just to be clear.
Just to be
5.2 with some conservatism, with some contingency. One of the open questions is what do you do with Board of Ed storage materials? Within that area, when you typically think of storage, you think of something you access maybe once or twice a year, it's down there. Whatever. What I've been told subsequently is the Board of Ed actually uses that. Their special ed files, they're all locked up, they're secured in the cages, but they reference them sometimes 2-3 times a day. They're out there. So you'll have to figure out what to do with those files and where they go so they can continue to access. So that is an open question of using that space. How does that impact the Board of Ed and what do we do with impact that issue?
Really? So,
I know. Isn't that,
Let's not sell insurance.
Yeah.
So anyway, wanted you guys to have the same information.
Yeah, I mean, and I wish, and maybe it's my own fault, but if we have these big presentations on significant items, I mean, I get, an email that says, here's the council agenda, but I don't spend time looking at the council agenda. It certainly would be helpful if someone would give us a heads up to say, hey, there's gonna be a presentation on this, or community center when it happens, or whatever, so they don't have to do it twice. Because we need to hear about it too. I mean, I don't mind going to a council meeting. I need to, it would be helpful if someone.
Well, it is good to have the videos. I mean, you can always run through YouTube, but the presentation was probably 20 minutes. So it wouldn't certainly have been worth sitting in the whole council meeting.
You can easily skip through and get right to the.
Yeah.
So to make it clear, 5.2 more or less, plus whatever Board of Ed stuff. Okay.
Okay. The next one's just a placeholder. If you wanted anything after the hearing, obviously you have a workshop tomorrow night, so that's what let you guys skip it and do nothing.
Well, really, what I had was, we had shared a sizable surplus from FY22. So my thought process was eliminate the capital equipment and budget proposal and use that surplus to accommodate. That's just
That's for you guys to decide.
I mean, at this point, I'd rather wait till we got Mark here. So, yeah. Everybody hearing the same thing. I wasn't thinking we were going to do anything with the budget tonight, so I was a little surprised when I saw it.
It's just a placeholder so that you have the options.
And the capital number in the budget right now is 730.
It's up 730. It's 1.131
That's the capital.
in the budget, which is up about 730. It was 370 last year, so it's about 730, 760. Budget in front of me.
It's one point include both of that. And
Oh, okay, so both combined is 1.1. The town's, I think, was 730, wasn't it? Fire truck and the.
Would be down at the bottom where the blue box is, would be the Board of Ed one, and then the next section above. would be the town.
General government was 673 and the education was 460.
And those would all end up on the general government budget. The Board of Ed budget is just the operational part, which means whatever you would appropriate would have to go through council and then what this, the town purchasing requirements as well.
Anybody wants to bring something up? It's fine.
I still like the idea of using some of the COVID money, to get rid of that 1.1 million. I know it's a one-time deal, but
I don't really have anything specific to talk about. We share the financials. I think we're doing pretty well. The tax collection rate is solid. We're staying within bounds on expenditures. We're seeing a little bit related to storms. Meals are slightly over, about $500 over budget, easily absorbed within other elements. Nothing really unusual or complex. So I think we're going to finish the year pretty solid. And it's good. I don't think there's any questions.
Had a good month in terms of back taxes and supplemental motor vehicles.
Yeah, part of what happened is last month, you may recall that we ended the January 31st because it was a Monday. It's not in there. We had about $2 million on that day, so that was substantial piece. So yeah, they're in good shape. Tax office doing a really good job, and the taxpayers.
Anything in the, I was looking at my favorite department. Anything in their revenue estimates, the V&A, what I'm talking about. Anything in the actual revenues to date that has you rethinking your revenue estimate for next year?
For next year?
For next year.
Not at this point. I think there may be a little risk to this year's number, depending on where it comes in, but
We were already estimating something else, right?
130,000 off budget, 670 versus 8. Not at this point, but we are watching it. We are looking at everything closely. So.
Questions?
Gonna get you guys downstairs.
Move to adjourn.
second.
All in favor?
That's your-
Great.
Back to you. Yeah.